Bloomberg Audio Studios. Podcasts, radio, news.
Well, Elon Musk is now the richest person on the planet.
More than half the satellites in space are owned and controlled by one man.
Well, he's a legitimate super genius. I mean, legitimate.
He says he's always voted for Democrats, but this year it will be different. He'll vote Republican.
There is a reason the U.S. government is so reliant on him.
Elon Musk is a scam artist, and he's done nothing.
Anything he does is fascinating to people.
Welcome to Elon Inc., Bloomberg's weekly podcast about Elon Musk. It's Tuesday, July 16th. I'm your host, David Papadopoulos. Well, we debated coming to you late Friday night for a discussion about what, at that point, felt like the most important news of the weekend. A Bloomberg exclusive that Elon was donating to a Republican super PAC supporting Donald Trump. But then, on Saturday, there was an assassination attempt on Donald Trump and, minutes later, a full-throated Trump endorsement from Musk. And on Monday, as the Republican National Convention kicked off and Trump made his first post-shooting appearance, a figure emerged on those Musk donations, a cool $45 million every month. To recap and comprehend these stunning events, I'm joined by our all-star regulars, Dana Hull and Max Chafkin.
Hey.
Hey, David.
And we'll be joined in a little bit by Brad Stone, editor of Businessweek, which just published an exclusive sit-down interview with Donald Trump. Dana, take us through chronologically a bit of the TikTok here. Let's go back to Friday night, to our scoop, and then walk us through the frenetic series of events over the weekend and into yesterday.
Musk has all but endorsed Trump for months now on X and taken lots of pot shots at Joe Biden. And the big question was, how much money is Elon going to put into this race? And if so, when? And on Friday night, our colleagues in Washington, Jennifer Jacobs and Bill Allison, had this exclusive report that Musk was donating to America PAC, which is this big super PAC that a lot of the tech people are behind and a lot of Musk's friends are behind. Then on Saturday, we had the assassination attempt. Very quickly after this attempt, Musk comes out with this full-throated endorsement of Trump on X. And then yesterday, reporting emerged that the dollar amount is roughly $45 million a month, or about $180 million total through the campaign. To be clear, Musk has not actually donated yet. We're not going to see the filing from the FEC until the October deadline, but that is apparently what he has pledged.
Now, Max, Musk initially responded to that report of $45 million a month, $180 million total, by tweeting some iteration of fake news. But our sense is that number is legit. It looks like we ourselves have also followed and corroborated the journal's reporting.
Yeah, a couple of things. One is that, Elon Musk has a long history of making kind of big claims about amounts of money that he's going to give or donate. So I think we should take this all with a little bit of grain of salt. He is a boastful guy. He's larger than life. I think we need to wait until we see.
So you want to apply a discount rate to that $180 million? You're taking it down to $18 million?
Yeah.
Strip the zero
That
out?
said, it appears he has made a donation, although we won't know for sure until we see it in the federal filings. So the filings that are out only cover to June. Supposedly this donation was made in July, so we don't know for sure. But it seems like we're talking about a very substantial donation. $180 million or anything close to that would be enormous.
So, Dana, whether the numbers ultimately proves to be 180 or something slightly less, it is still ultimately an enormous investment by the Musk empire in Trump 2.0.
Oh, absolutely. And it's really rare for the CEO of a consumer-facing product like cars to be this active in a presidential cycle, particularly when Tesla's consumer base for years had been typically liberal-leaning people who lived on the coasts. And so what this means for kind of Tesla's brand going forward is super interesting. I'm also just curious about where is Musk getting this money? The guy is not famously liquid. I mean, if you look at Tesla's proxy, he basically has pledged his Tesla shares against his own personal indebtedness. So it's not clear to me where this $45 million a month is actually coming from? Is it from X.AI? Is it against X? Is he borrowing from SpaceX? Like, there's a real question here about where does this cash come from?
Right. So, Dana, I get the illiquid part, that he's not the most liquid guy, or his money, his assets aren't the most liquid assets in the world. But you're telling me that a guy that's got $200 billion or so can't come up with $45 million a month?
What I'm saying is that his wealth is largely based on his Tesla stock, and it's paper money. I'm just questioning whether he's got to sell shares in one of his companies in order to access this money. I mean, yeah, he's the richest person in the world. He's got assets, but he doesn't have like millions of dollars sitting in cash in a bank account, as far as I know.
But part of me suspects that he's feeling a little bit the Tesla rally here, Max, that the stock is up a ton, and I think he's feeling a little flush, A, and then B, yeah, sure, it might not be super liquid. It's tied up in Tesla stock and other things, but he can borrow against that stock.
Yeah, and the interesting thing, Tesla stock's was rallying again on Monday, yesterday, as we're recording, despite some sort of questionable news. And it does seem like there's a chance that Tesla will trade like a Trump meme stock. And so, in other words, there could be some kind of synergy happening here where in making this donation to Trump and becoming a big Trump supporter as Trump does well. Like,
this is a good theory.
On Monday, the stock of Truth Social went way up, on Bloomberg TV, and our colleagues in markets talking about the so-called Trump trade. And so you could see a situation where it creates a little bit of momentum behind Tesla that he can then use to, of course, donate to the former president. By the way, just looked, it would put him in the top 5 of donors. Probably.
A donation that large would put him in the top 5.
And it could, depending on who donates what. I mean, he could end up being the biggest donor.
But that's a super interesting point, right? That Tesla has always been backed to a certain degree, by institutional investors. It's a very large company that produces a lot of cars a year and so on and so forth. But it's always had a certain meme stock feel to it a bit, in the sense that the Elon fanboys, that retail crowd. So goes this theory that as he hitches his wagon that much more closely to Trump, the meme stock element of it gets raised to the second power.
No, and the thing is, we saw that in the endorsement. So it's kind of head-scratching that Elon would choose this somber, very difficult, very upsetting moment, the attempted assassination of a former president at a rally, to give his endorsement. But Elon Musk is somebody, right, who likes to kind of be part of whatever is trending. And in that sense, piggybacking on this news or inserting himself in this news is totally in character. He likes to be in the middle of where he sees the vibes being. And when you look at that endorsement, it's like a vibes thing. He's looking at this defiant pose of the former president and saying, that looks cool. And in some sense, basing his endorsement on that.
Yeah, Dana, you've been, of course, covering Elon for a long time. What did you make of that instantaneous endorsement?
Well, to Max's point, I mean, Musk loves to be the main character. And Saturday was a day when the news of the assassination attempt kind of ricocheted around the world. And a lot of people were, frankly, flocking to social media to get updates. And engagement was very high on all social platforms. And what better day to kind of announce that you're endorsing the man who just survived a shooting attempt than that day. And so I think it was very shrewd of Musk to do it on that day. He kind of got the most bang for his buck in terms of engagement, in terms of publicity. And he's always been very, very smart about kind of creating news cycles and creating narratives and getting attention.
To be fair to Musk, I'm sure if he were sitting here, he would say that it wasn't a cynical calculation. I was supporting somebody who I see as courageous, who's under attack. It was a question of solidarity. And I'm not sure he is. There are if you're a social media manager at PepsiCo or something, you are literally looking at the trending list and trying to figure out, is there an opportunity here to promote my brand? I'm not sure that Elon Musk is really doing that. I think it's just sort of an innate understanding of how news cycles work. The other thing is, I'm not sure this was a totally savvy political move. You kind of want to make the endorsement at a moment where it's going to be the big story. And Elon Musk managed to do it at a moment where it was almost like an afterthought. I mean, you have an assassination attempt, you have the RNC, there's a lot going on. So in a lot of ways, I think this endorsement kind of actually got lost in what seemed like, a bigger story.
Yeah, and I just got to say, whether it was ultimately savvy or not for him, it certainly, at least from where I sit and the way I saw it, it struck me as odd, right? And just like, I don't know, like these things are playing out in real time. You know, the former president's life, it seemed to be okay and fine, but like, just let things play out. But Max, let me ask you this though, because it seems like Musk's fingerprints are really all over this Republican ticket right now. The cash he's giving Trump, the endorsement he gave Trump, and apparently from what we're seeing in reporting, the role he played in getting J.D. Vance on the ticket as the VP candidate, he's suddenly playing kingmaker of sorts here.
Yeah, he's trying to. He is in many ways at odds with Joe Biden. His political evolution has moved towards Trump. And when you look at that, the Republican platform, like what is being promoted at the RNC, you know, in the innovation column, there are like 3 items, 2 of which are pet projects of Elon Musk. One is about anti-woke AI and developing AI in a way that, you know, it's very Muskian in the language. And the other is commercial space. So like he does seem to be potentially influencing,
shaping the platform.
And now Trump, of course, can be very transactional. Also, historically, has been a bit unreliable. So we'll see how this all plays out. But he does seem to be in a position of real influence at the moment.
If Trump loses, how big a black eye is this for him, and how bad is this for the Musk empire?
Bad. It's very bad. And I mean, you know, I think Elon Musk, you know, right now we're talking about, oh, he looks like such a political genius, right? He got behind Trump early and he's backing a winning ticket. He's also like, we didn't even talk about this, but like the media landscape has really shifted to Elon Musk's X feed. But the bear case is ugly. He's being investigated, as Dana said, by numerous Biden agencies and numerous federal agencies. There is no reason to think that scrutiny would stop. And, you know, it would...
Right, it wouldn't stop, but they wouldn't necessarily, like, ramp up their probes because, you know, he tried to really tip the election in the Republicans' favor.
Oh, I don't think the government would ever. I mean, you're telling me that sometimes federal agencies are politically motivated, David? No, I mean, yeah, I think that if I were Elon Musk, I would be very worried about a Biden win. And I think that concern would grow. I mean, right now it feels like very much a hypothetical fear. But if Biden actually took the White House,
or some other Democrat,
yeah. I mean, he is a guy who depends on government contracts,
right,
and who has numerous run-ins with federal agencies. I don't know. I'd rather be on the good side of the boss of that administration.
Okay. I want to bring in now Brad Stone, the editor of Businessweek. Hello, Brad.
Hi, David.
So, Brad, you just interviewed Donald Trump for a piece that's going to run on the cover of the magazine, and you've met Elon and know him a bit. For starters, tell us, you know, what did the two men have in common?
Mm-hmm. Well, first, David, let me put the interview with Trump in the timeline because so much has happened. I went down to Mar-a-Lago with my colleagues Nancy Cook, Josh Green, and Mario Parker on June 25th. So that is the calm before the storm. It's 2 days before the presidential debate, about 10 days before the assassination attempt. Trump was in great form, personable, definitely already riding a sort of sense of optimism in the campaign. I think, you know, there are a couple of superficial similarities to Elon. Obviously, the same healthy sense of self-regard, trotting out some of the greatest hits, the jokes that he likes to reuse. In Trump's case, it was only overweight people drink Diet Coke. More meaningfully, you know, they both have this sort of deep sense of grievance, like this feeling like they've been injured by political opposition or investigative reporting, and as a result, try to delegitimize the news industry. So, you know, Trump was smarting from reports of his behavior or reception at the Business Roundtable, still grieving from the congressional committee into the investigation into January 6th. In Elon's case, obviously, you're very familiar, like investigative reporting into the culture at SpaceX, the environmental impact of his efforts. Both of them doing everything they can to delegitimize the media. And the second thing I would say is like they both have a very similar embrace of, let's call them controversial pet causes. In Elon's case, as Dana has reported, this embrace of declining birth rates as one of the great threats to civilization. And then in Trump's case, and we, of course, got an earful, immigration and the idea that criminals are pouring into the country and stealing U.S. jobs. Very similar in that respect.
Yeah, so these two men have had a rocky past. They've had some moments where they were buddies and allies of sorts, certainly towards the beginning of the Trump presidency back in 17. Then as the Trump presidency comes to an end, and in the wake of January 6th and all that, and spilling into 2022, they really get into a pretty public feud. You know, at one point, Trump says Musk is just another bullshit artist. Musk then fired back saying Trump was too old to be president and he should just hang up his hat and sail into the sunset. Trump then responds with one of his favorite classic lines. You were just mentioning lines he likes, Brad, and this is one of his all-time favorites where he says that I could have said to them, drop to your knees and beg, and he would have done it. So I guess I ask you, if this is the past they've had, is now going to be any different? Do they manage to sustain the relationship this time around?
I think so. And maybe Dana and Max will disagree. But Elon came up about 90 seconds into our interview with Donald Trump. We asked President Trump, had President Biden done anything good with the economy? And we're going to publish the transcript so you can see his kind of meandering answer. But essentially, Trump said he'd love to credit President Biden, but he couldn't. And then he immediately started talking about EVs and the Biden administration's kind of EV incentives. And it was a sort of tepid attack on EVs. But essentially, he said you can't have 100% of your cars being electric. We can't go all in, which, of course, is not what the Biden administration is doing. But he made a point to say, I love Elon. Elon is fantastic. And I think it goes to the heart of this alliance between these two men, this opportunistic alliance where they're both getting something out of the relationship. You know, the first go round and when Musk left the president's business council after Trump took the U.S. out of the Paris Climate Accords, there wasn't an alliance right there. There was sort of a tenuous interaction. But, Musk is all in for Trump. He does not like to be wrong. He does not like to retreat on things that he's laid a stake in the ground on. Trump is his candidate. Trump, obviously, one of his great political appeals to wealthy people and companies is his flexibility, let's call it. And I think Musk feels like his contribution can be reflected in policy and the platform, as Max said. And so I think that this time it's an opportunistic alliance, and we're unlikely to see a retreat from either figure.
Just to push back for 1 second, in 2016 there was an alliance. It was not as at least as I saw it, it was not as strong as this one. But Elon Musk was essentially campaigning for government contracts. He started the Boring Company right at the same time that Trump was talking about these infrastructure projects. He was showing up at the White House. And the reason it fell apart was partly the Paris Climate Accords. Like, that was the reason that was given. But what was happening is a lot of Tesla customers were complaining. Like, they were mad about Elon's association with Donald Trump.
Well, they're still mad.
But back then, right, those Tesla customers, that customer base was a lot more left-leaning than I think it is today. At this point, and this is why I agree with Brad that, like, this alliance is likely to be more durable. Elon Musk is not sort of breaking with his political identity and supporting Trump this time around.
He's come to terms with alienating a fair amount of what was his original customer base.
And a lot has happened in the past 4 years. I mean, he moved from California to Texas. He's now trying to sell the Cybertruck to red state voters. He has made his political views very clear, abundantly clear, over and over again in kind of increasingly inflammatory tweets on X. Today he took a pot shot at the state of California and transgender youth rights. Like, he's very clear, like, the mask is off, and people can argue about whether Musk has always been this way or whether he's somehow changed, but his politics are very clear. And I think it's just a question of, like, what is the ask? Like,
right.
What else does he want from a Trump administration? Is it lower? Is it like lower interest rates? Is it tariffs on China? Is it border security? Like,
Dana, how about a return to X? And how about he says, Mr. President, can you please start eexing again on my platform? I mean, I don't know, right?
That was a hypothetical trade that Josh Green suggested on an earlier podcast. And I still think it is a reasonable possibility that we'll see Trump. Now, again, Trump, there's some rules around Truth Social. It's not clear what exactly Trump is able to do without breaking his agreements with Truth Social, which is an ex-competitor. But we talked about in the podcast some possibilities. X Spaces, the audio platform. You could imagine the former president spending time there or some sort of cross-posting situation. There are probably ways to help Elon Musk without necessarily hurting Truth Social shareholders who probably wouldn't care anyway. The other thing is, back in 2016, Tesla was an EV company. Tesla today, according to Elon Musk, is not an EV company, right? It is a AI company. And so it sounds a little weird to hear Elon Musk supporting a candidate who hates electric vehicles, given that Elon Musk is essentially the architect of the electric vehicle movement globally. But the thing is, Tesla now has a dominant position in electric cars in the United States. It's not necessarily clear that the policies that Trump are talking about would even hurt Tesla. And furthermore, right, Elon Musk is moving away from electric cars. He's all about the Robotaxi now.
If Trump were to say, I hate Robotaxis, then
oh my God, I don't even want to think about that.
All right, so Brad, what's your sense? Is Elon's big ask, please start eexing again, Mr. President, or is it something else you suspect?
Yeah, I think it's a longer game, and I think Max mentioned it before. I think that government contracts, department contracts, NASA, billions and billions of dollars are at stake. Jeff Bezos, the last time around, via his ownership of the Washington Post, kind of demonstrated inadvertently what can happen when you get on the wrong side of the former president's need for praise. It arguably cost Amazon the Jedi contract. You saw when, after the former president survived the assassination attempt, Bezos turned to X and immediately expressed his appreciation for the former president and expressed his well wishes. I think he understands, this is Jeff Bezos said, he is once again perhaps on the wrong side of the incoming president. And that can cost him. Trump, in our interview, was still railing against the Washington Post and Bezos. And I think Elon knows that this is a president who can be somewhat malleable to people who he thinks are on his side. His flip-flop on TikTok was a great illustration of that. And the fact that Jeff Yass, a major Trump backer, is also an investor in ByteDance, the company that owns TikTok. So I think that's the game, in part, that Elon is playing here.
The other thing that Trump and Musk also share is, to Brad's point earlier, this kind of grievance about being the victims of witch hunts and what both of them now call lawfare, which is this kind of overreach, government excess. The deep state is coming after them. And Musk is under investigation by all sorts of federal agencies. The EEOC has sued Tesla for racism at the plant in Fremont. NHTSA is looking at autopilot. The DOJ and the SEC are looking at how Tesla has marketed what they call autopilot and full self-driving. So there's multiple government probes, including in the Southern District of New York, that are in varying stages of robustness. And I think there's also probably a very big hope on Musk's part that Trump is reelected and those agencies are gutted, and that all of those various probes and federal inquiries just go away.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't discount that.
I think that's the number one item on his hypothetical.
You're just getting to it now?
Request for... Well, it's not even an item because it's pretty core to Trump's sort of promise with his campaign and J.D. Vance's, right? They are promising to restore executive authority as they see it to the federal government. And that could mean, essentially defanging a bunch of these regulatory agencies that Elon Musk has huge problems with. Elon Musk doesn't really have to ask for this, actually. It's something that Trump and people around Trump seem to be very interested in and excited about and so on. But it definitely seems like a huge part of the appeal.
Okay, Brad, I'm going to put you on the spot, and it's distinctly possible you look bad here with your answer, and we're going to find out in the next few days.
Is this another quiz, David?
At some point in these shows, there's always a quiz. Does Elon make an appearance at the RNC this week?
I think so. I mean, we'll see, but I think it would be hard for him to relinquish the opportunity in the spotlight. This is now, I think, an adoring audience for him, and as we've seen in the past, he likes to be feted. So I'm going to say that the answer is yes.
I have to admit that I wake up every morning and the first thing I do is go to Reddit and see where the jet is. Is it en route to Milwaukee or not? I think at the moment it's still on the ground in Hawthorne, but that is part of my regular beat checks that I do every day.
My bet is that he will not appear in person at the RNC, but will zoom in.
I thought you said he was going to send the Robotaxi.
We actually talked about this with Nancy Cook on the podcast because Elon Musk, first of all, he's not a super comfortable speaker. He's not, and I also think there may be something about he sees himself as important, if not more important than Donald Trump. There may be something about actually going to the RNC that feels maybe beneath him. So I'm betting on a weird, slightly uncomfortable, kind of Zoom session where he endorses Trump.
I am curious to see if Musk actively campaigns for Trump at all going forward. Are they going to do a border event? What else is going to happen? I'm just imagining stump scenarios. I mean, I covered the presidential campaign back in 2004, and there's all these kind of I'm just sort of imagining the possibilities of Musk and Trump go to the border in Texas, or Trump comes to the next Starship launch. I mean, there's so many possibilities for theater and for political photographs. I just sort of wonder if we're going to see something more active than just a bunch of tweets.
Now, can we move off politics for a second here and talk about Dana's big scoop from last week? So, Dana, you indeed did inform the world before everyone else that Tesla is delaying the great unveiling of the Robotaxi. It had been slated for sometime in the month of August
8th.
And they moved it back to October-ish. Delayed, Dana, because of quote unquote design changes. What does that mean? And is that truly the reason? Is that what's going on here?
Well, what's so fascinating about covering Tesla is that, as many people know, or maybe don't know, they disbanded their communications team in 2019. So 5 years ago. So there really is no way to call the company for comment. And so anytime we have reporting and we're about to put out a story, we always go directly to Elon and are we're about to report this. Is there any context you want to provide? And we always give them opportunity to weigh in. And there was nothing. So our story was it's delayed. Elon asked for some kind of design change. And they also just need to build more cars. I mean, they don't want to just pull the sheet off of one prototype. They want to prove that they've actually built many prototypes. So they need more time to actually build more prototypes. So the story came out on Thursday morning, and the stock traded quite drastically as a result. A lot of inbound.
It dropped, to be clear.
8%, I think.
Yes, 8%. Yes. I think $60 billion of market cap was wiped out. Yeah. And a lot of analysts started calling me what else do you know? And I was I'm not going to tell you anything that we didn't publish. Read the story. It was very clear. Yeah. I found out very quickly which Wall Street analysts actually subscribe to the Bloomberg terminal and which do not. And then there was all this stuff on X about how this was fake news and why didn't Elon knock it down? And so we were sort of waiting. At some point Elon is going to have to chime in here. And then yesterday, he basically confirmed our scoop, almost verbatim. So I don't know. I mean, I think that, I think that he pulled this 8/8 date out of a hat when he announced it in April. I think he was very much trying to kind of knock down or get ahead of or recuperate from a Reuters story, which basically said that he was abandoning the lower cost car and going all in on the Robotaxi. So then he was the Robotaxi is coming August 8th, and August 8th is a big date in numerology circles in China. Mm-hmm. It's supposed to bring good luck. Now the speculation is that it's going to be October 10th, or that it's going to be a bigger October surprise.
8, get the snacks, 8, 10, 10. Then we go 12, 12. To all right, keep
11,
helping
11.
After 12, 12. What comes?
1-1? I don't. If there wasn't an assassination attempt against the former president, if there wasn't a Republican National Convention this week, this is what we'd be talking about. This is
Correct.
A really bad development if you're a Robotaxi believer. Remember, when he made all these
But why? But why can't it just simply be, I got out over my skis, I said 8/8, I meant 10/10?
Just because when he made this announcement, that Tesla was essentially pivoting towards robotaxis, there are a lot of questions about how realistic this is. And I've talked about this before, right? There are a lot of big companies have spent a lot of money trying to make robotaxis work. Tesla doesn't seem to have worked on any of these issues. And he's going to come out with all this in a couple of months? It seems really tough to believe. And fairly last-minute delay for vague reasons is fueling the narrative that, maybe this is vaporware. Remember, sometimes Tesla introduces products that are very well formed, and sometimes it introduces products that are sort of just figments of Elon Musk's imagination. The original launch of the Optimus robot, which I think in some sense is still vaporware, was literally just a guy in Lycra pretending to be a robot. And I think there's a real risk here that we're going to see the car equivalent of that car in Lycra, car in a robotaxi costume.
So, all right, to wrap up the Robotaxi segment and to wrap up our show here and to prove to Brad that, yes, there's always a quiz or sometimes multiple quizzes on the show, I will ask the three of you to give me your best guesstimate on the timing of the great Robotaxi reveal. So if he initially said 8/8, August 8th was the date, and now he's saying October, and we all know how Musk time works. Max Chafkin, when do we actually get to lay eyes on the great Robotaxi? Give me a month, day, and hour.
This is like the first unveiling, not an actual Robotaxi.
The unveiling when he pulls off the Lycra sheet, and we see something.
I think he'll do it in October. I think it's gonna be hard, especially given the delay, to create a further delay.
He sticks with October. Dana,
I'm going to go October 10th.
2 votes for him sticking with October. Brad, do we have a clean sweep?
I'm going to agree. Just because he's going to unveil something does not mean that it's ready for prime time, as he has amply demonstrated in the past. But the risks of delay here would be a bit too embarrassing for him. So we'll see something.
Okay, so no double delay. There is consensus here, which tells me, being the contrarian I am, that there's no chance in hell it comes out in October.
Okay, one wild card theory, because he's embarrassed by the delay, he could pull it forward. So maybe they do late September. Then he gets to be Musk beats his, they could do something funky like that. But
I like that.
That's a good theory. Max, Dana, Brad, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you, David.
Always a pleasure.
Great to be here.
This episode was produced by Stacey Wong. Naomi Shavin and Rayhan Harmansi are our senior editors. The idea for this very show also came from Rayhan. Blake Maples handles engineering, and we get special editing assistance from Jeff Grocott, Antonia Mufarech, and Arafat Jalasho Perry. Our supervising producer is Magnus Henriksen. The Elon Inc. theme is written and performed by Taka Yasuzawa and Alex Sugiura. Brendan Francis Newnham is our executive editor, and Sage Bauman is the head of Bloomberg Podcasts. A big thanks to our supporter, Joel Weber. I'm David Papadopoulos. If you have a minute, rate and review our show. It'll help other listeners find us. See you next week.